After Sunday, everything is going to change. And I have tried to spend the last year warning people, attempting, sometimes poorly, to educate people about the history of the region and the true nature of the problems that have come up down here. It's a tough thing because it's a complicated argument, and it's easy just to use the blanket term socialism failed to cover this when it's so much more than that. Venezuela was one of the founding members of OPEC. Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait were the other four. I think if you look at the history of what's happened in those countries over the last few years, what's happening down here, I think, will be more apparent. They are showing us the way. I know that sounds horrible, like I'm saying that we should be socialist or something. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they are and have been in the crosshairs of a giant effort toward globalization. And a tiny, tiny country like this of 38 million people, just even with the wealth from their oil, did not have the ability to stand and win. They did for a while, and they did a pretty good job of it. I can't ask you to believe me because I'm just one guy. I was stationed down in this region. I know these people. But I need to ask you to believe your own history, your own past. If they've lied to you about this, and if they've lied to you about this, and they've lied to everyone about this, can you understand why maybe, just maybe, they might be lying to you about this? If what they were saying was true, why would anybody support the guy? See, there's something said in this particular article here that I think will ring true with folks who support the current administration, and maybe will open eyes a little bit to the great lie coming out of the mainstream media. The great lie, of course, is that nationwide starvation and rampant runaway inflation has caused the crumble of the society, and the dystopian future is unsure unless forces from the saviors of the world, the UN or the US, step in and ride to the rescue. And I just want you to look at this picture. And do you see starving people? Do you see a dystopian future? You see people that are not happy. And I'm sure people that wish things were better than what they are. Here's what I wanted to read for you. Blandon is part, speaking of the woman in this article, is part of an estimated of 1/5 of Venezuela's population that political analysts and polls have identified as the bedrock of support for the Chavismo movement founded by the late socialist leader Hugo Chavez. Her pain and devotion to the ruling party appear contradictory. Poor Venezuelans like Blandon have suffered the most from Venezuela's dizzying list of woes, including disease, water, all this kind of stuff. But she is convinced an economic war is to blame for her hardships, repeating Maduro's accusations that a cunning oligarchy is seeking to sabotage socialism in Latin America. Now listen to this. Even if they call us ignorant, even if they call us stupid, it doesn't matter. The enduring loyalty many Venezuelans feel toward Chavez and his legacy stems from the fact that his 1999 to 2013 government was, for much of the country's poor majority, the first administration that had their interests at heart. Now listen to this. After decades of elites alternating power. After decades of elites alternating power. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like something that might ring a bell? See, these are the people that support the guy. See, the mainstream media doesn't want you to know that the U.S. seized almost $3 billion in Venezuelan assets and bank accounts around the world in the last 2 years. That stopped them from purchasing food and medicine and all sorts of stuff. And here it talks about Chavez poured money from an oil bonanza into Cuban-staffed medical clinics and free housing for the poor, transforming the lives of millions before he died of cancer in 2013. But under his successor, Maduro, former bus driver and union leader, the OPEC nation with the world's biggest crude reserves has suffered 5 years, well here, of course, brutal recession, when really it was U.S.-engineered collapse in oil prices. You know, and it's funny, it's ironic that everyone out there in my audience who has come and said, socialism always fails and it's socialism's fault. So you're saying an unelected group of people sitting around deciding randomly what a price of something should be and what the supply should be at any one given time is not a good idea. That we should let market forces take over and determine those things. Ever heard of OPEC? The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries? 5 founding members are Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. So yeah, OPEC. And of course, there's a whole bunch of others that have a say. The price of oil itself, here and everywhere else in the world, is not subjected to market forces. It is a group of people sitting around deciding this is going to be the supply tomorrow, and this is going to be the price tomorrow. And the U.S. hasn't had any issue with that because they've had their buddies, the Saudis, do their bidding. This time, the Venezuelans tried to vote against the artificially engineered crash in oil prices that led to this problem down there. People like John Oliver say, oh, the price just went down magically. Totally ignorant of the fact that it was a decision made by a random group of people to decide what the supply is going to be and what it's going to be worth. Sound familiar? I'm going to go back here because there's some other statements made that I think would really help you understand this. Many opposition supporters, now these are the people that are pro-U.S., say poor Venezuelans have been duped into supporting a corrupt autocratic government that is impoverishing the nation and indebting it to predatory allies like China and Russia. The U.S. criminalized anyone issuing debt to Venezuela. Venezuela didn't have any other choice. The U.S., its sanctions, its allies were prohibited by law by saying they had to either violate U.S. sanction, or if they were U.S., they had to violate U.S. law to help out Venezuela. They weren't even allowed. But his supporters are saying that it's Maduro's fault that the only places they could get loans are China and Russia. It's a mechanism of social control. Right. Uh-huh. Tell me another one. You see, there are shortages, and they are engineered in certain areas. But in other areas, things aren't nearly that bad. But you're never going to see that, are you? See, here they're talking about, oh, the poor Venezuelans, at least they have the beach. But they don't realize how this completely argues with the story. And I'm sorry, my computer's acting a little weird. Do you see people fishing? Do you see people digging for clams? Let's see here. There was a comment down here I thought that you guys might like to let's see here. This guy talks about here drinking beer. There we go. Yeah, on a sandy stretch at the coastal town of La Guaira, I think I said that right. Just an hour's drive from Caracas, young men gulp down beer while kids splash in the surf, delighted to be given extra days out of class. So not only are the kids out of class, the people can skip work. Huh, that's interesting. For an entire country that is falling apart and can't feed themselves and is dystopian, you got people at the beach. You see, and you can read this. This is OPEC Brief History. And it talks about the different countries that are, part of OPEC. But this was about an engineered attack on one of the 5 founding members of OPEC. If you think about this, and you think about it with an independent mind, and I'm not going to talk about what's going on in the news today, but if they'll lie to you about that, and they'll lie to you about this, and they'll lie to you about this, and they'll lie to you about this, what makes you think they aren't going to lie to you about this? Like, share, subscribe.